Right before we get the video started, I want to tell you guys about this app that I just found called Real Cappers. It's a great app. It's a sports predictions platform where basically right now they have UFC only, but they're trying to acquire all the best cappers or some of the best cappers in the world to come on their site, give their predictions. You get to go to the site. You could sign up yourself. You could give your own predictions on there if you feel like you're an adequate enough capper. And people can go on there, they can buy your picks, but you can also go on there and you could see exactly where certain cappers are on certain fights. And right now it's still early, so I think a lot of people haven't put their predictions in. That's why you see 100% on certain ones. But you'll see essentially where each capper or all the cappers on the site are leaning on a certain fight. You could look at the odds, you could see the implied probability of win, and you could see if you can find yourself some pretty good options based off what cappers that you trust think and the money lines to make good bets. So definitely think Real Cappers is a great bet. You go to the Google Play Store, you go to the App Store, you could find it, you could sign up, you could start putting your own picks, you could just look at the site, check out the predictions, and use it to base your bets off of. And so yeah, man, definitely check it out, Real Cappers. I think it's a great app, and I think they're only going to grow from here. So Real Cappers, check them out, sign up, and start getting that great knowledge. Yo, what's up, guys? We're back for another week of breakdown of predictions. This week we've got a huge week. We got one of the biggest cards of the year that had some shakeups recently that made the card to some people even more enticing. But UFC 294, we got Alexander Volkanovski stepping in on short notice. He's going to be taking on Islam Makhachev for the second time, trying to claim the title. This time, a lot of people felt he should have won last time, so it's a great fight, and it's a fight that was very competitive the first time that we saw it. Two of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world, and the rest of the card's really good too. I mean, this first fight of the night's going to be really fun to break down, but right before we get started, just want to talk about, put a like on this video, man. I would really appreciate it. Everyone that's listening right now, hit that like button. Let's try to get over 200 likes. That would be incredible. I'd really appreciate it. Put a comment down below. Tell me what you think about my predictions. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Last week, we're coming off a pretty good week in terms of predictions on the channel for UFC. We went 8-3 on that card. We picked Elkins to win. We picked Barbosa. I think we had another underdog in there. So we did a decent job last week in terms of predictions. We're going to be trying to run that back, do it again. And once again, we're going to be putting on bets at patreon.com/MMAPredictionGuru. I got quite a few bets on there. So definitely go check that out. Make sure to put yourself in position with a great community, a great capper, and be able to make some money off watching UFC, man. I think it's a great opportunity. So patreon.com/MMAPredictionGuru, helping yourself out, you're helping the channel out, and we get to grow together and make some money together. So definitely go over there, check it out. Got quite a few bets already for UFC. So, but let's get in this first fight of the night with Bruno Silva. He's taking on Nurmagomedov. And Bruno Silva, I mean, this is a really tough test, and he's no stranger to these type of fights in the UFC. He's been kind of matched up with the really hard guys. He fought Brendan Allen. He fought Alex Pereira. So he's been in there with some of the best, and he's coming off a loss, and 3 of his last 4 fights since his war with Alex Pereira, he has lost, hasn't really looked the same, and he needs to bring his A game here, compete, focus in this fight if he wants a chance to win, and he's no stranger to fighting Russians. He had a run in M1 Global, and I'm sure that's given him some confidence here for this fight. But he's taken on one of the bigger prospects to join the UFC in years in Nurmagomedov, who is a fighter with a different look than almost any fighter you're going to see in UFC history. I mean, due to his eye injury, and he's an extremely entertaining fighter to watch as well. So he's just an enticing guy all around. He has a crazy style. I mean, you'll see him even outside the cage getting into these fights, and he's kind of a loose cannon, but he's definitely very fun to watch, and he is someone that can end the fight with one strike. He has crazy knockout power. Shara, he's dangerous with all limbs too. He has the ability to land one-shot knockouts with hands, off the front foot, off the back foot. His kicks are dangerous. He has nasty knees and elbows, and he's light on his feet. He'll throw good feints. He bounces in out of range really well, and he's more of a kicker than a puncher, and counter striker primarily. He likes to use his lead leg. He uses it almost like a jab. He'll throw a lot of lead leg side kicks to the body. He can bring those kicks to the head too. After several lead leg side kicks to the body, he likes to go question mark kick. I've seen him throw axe kicks, switch kicks. I mean, basically has every kick in the book to any part of the body that you could think of. And he has heat in his hands too. He has a nice counter left hook. He has a good counter right cross. His right overhand is extremely powerful. And his feints and small movements to avoid and counter make him really dangerous when he's fresh, fast, and explosive. And I would say he isn't the best boxer, isn't the most active with his hands, but he's accurate with his counter punches. He keeps fighters at bay with the kicks, and then when fighters back him up, he has excellent clinch weapons too. I mean, he's always looking for the flashy stuff like the flying knees, spinning attacks, but he's also really good in the clinch with traditional, more technical techniques like just clinch knees, elbows off the break, and things like that. And defensively, he has pretty good distance control, head movement. He can get wild and seems like he can get a little bit tired sometimes. A fighter who can back him up continuously may give Magomedov some issues. And Magomedov, I mean, basically what he does is he looks to knock his opponents out with every strike he throws. He's ultra dangerous. 10 of his 11 wins are knockout wins. And brutal clinch knees, like I said, he has 3 knee knockouts in MMA. He doesn't really have the best wrestling, even though he's a Dagestani guy or a Russian guy. Not Dagestani, but he can get held against the cage. And overall, I mean, his wrestling and grappling are question marks. I feel a fighter who's good at staying active in the clinch, pushing guys against the cage, could give Magomedov some issues. And good defensive striker with wrestling maybe could give him issues as well. But the couple times that I did see Magomedov get put on his back, he did get up quickly. And he did kind of get lucky in his last fight where he gave his back on his spinning attack, but the round ended really quickly after that happened, so we didn't get to really see how he would have kind of acted with someone on his back. But his cardio is also hard to gauge for me because if you look at his fight at RCC 13, he slowed down, but he still fought hard through fatigue, and he is a dog, I will say that. But his more recent fight that went to decision, he pushed a crazy striking pace and looked fresh, so that's why I say his cardio is a little questionable because he's kind of shown good and bad cardio. But it's been almost a year since we've seen him, and I'm very excited to see what he brings. And Bruno Silva, he's a brawler. He has one-shot knockout power. He isn't as technical. He isn't as diverse or tricky as Magomedov. He is good in the pocket. He likes to get in the pocket, land that counter right hook or the big left hand. He'll blitz in with big looping shots, and he has to be on his pressure and slip game here like he was with Brad Tavares. If he can get on the inside, nullify the kicks of Magomedov, make it more of a battle of the hands, he has a chance. I don't think he will be the cleaner fighter even in that realm, but he has the chance to land himself and take out anyone in that kind of fight. And even though I'm kind of questionable on Magomedov's wrestling and grappling defense, Bruno Silva, even though he's a black belt, he's not really someone that tends to get a lot of finishes or get a lot of takedowns or use wrestling really or finishes on the ground. And I don't think he's really going to go to that here. So I feel like recently Silva's chin is kind of not held up the greatest in certain fights. I feel like he got hurt against GM3, which was kind of alarming. He got hurt in his last fight with Brendan Allen on the feet, and he's never been knocked out, but he's gotten hurt and submitted on several occasions. And Sherabud Magomedov, I mean, I just don't think he's going to be that nice about it. I think when he hurts someone, he's going to go out there and pound him in the ground. So more than likely, I just feel like Magomedov's going to get the TKO victory. I think that if Silva was coming in here before, like, pre-Alex Pereira fight, he would have more of a chance. But I think at this point he's getting a little bit withered, and I think he's kind of maybe more toward the tail end of his career. So I think it's a good opportunity for Shara to come in here, get a big statement win against a guy that people respect, and kind of move up the rankings quickly. So I'm going to go with Magomedov, and I think he's going to win via KO TKO, I'll say, in the first round. And continuing through the card, we got Viktoriia Dudakova. She's taking on Jinh Frey. And Dudakova, she's looking to make it 2 in a row to start a UFC career. Her first UFC fight really couldn't have gone much better for her. She took no damage. She won in 34 seconds due to an injury from her opponent. And now she's taking on a longtime MMA veteran in Jinh Frey. And Jinh Frey, she's kind of had mixed results in the UFC. She is coming off a close decision loss. She's lost 3 fights in a row overall, and she's 2-5 in her UFC career, so she hasn't been extremely successful, but she's had close fights that could have arguably gone her way that she's lost, and she hasn't won a fight since July of 2021. She's also 14 years older than Dudakova, so this is going to be an uphill battle here, and I think if she loses, she could potentially be cut from the UFC. But Dudakova, her opponent, she is still a developing fighter. She has high-level wrestling. As far as the striking goes, it seems like she has fast hands, and she'll throw decent combinations. But mainly she's throwing distracting punches to level change under, and it doesn't seem like she has the confidence in her stand-up. I think her hands don't look bad. I feel like as she progresses up the ladder, she needs to not be afraid to let her hands go and be standing more and more comfortable on the feet. I've yet to see a fighter really force her to do that, though. Dudakova has been able to implement her game plan on everyone she's faced so far. She has fast level changes. She has good single legs, good clinch takedowns. And on top, she can be a little inactive at times. Her ground and pound isn't that good, but she has decent jiu-jitsu. I've seen her get to the crucifix or the back against girls previously. She isn't infallible in the grappling. I've seen multiple fights where Dudakova pulled fighters on top of her by making mistakes, takedowns in the clinch. We watched on the Contender Series, Maria Silva was able to mount Dudakova, control her for a pretty good period of that round. Dudakova did show toughness in that Silva fight, though. She blew her knee out in the middle of the fight. She was visibly affected by it, but she fought through it and still won the 3rd round. Her cardio also checks out. Her last fight, she got an easy win, like I said, so this is kind of her unofficial UFC debut for me. And Jinh Frey, she's a well-rounded fighter. She's aging, but she still has some juice. She's arguably won her last couple of fights, even though she's lost them on the scorecards. And she's a Muay Thai striker. She has good low kicks. She has sharp boxing. She has decent power, but low volume, and she also has a questionable chin. In the clinch, Frey is strong. I think she can use her clinch takedowns in this fight to get on top. Maybe that's a path to victory for her, but I think her game plan ultimately is going to be try to strike, use kicks, counter shots, stay long, but she has to avoid the single, and if she ends up in the clinch, I think she needs to be on point there and get the better of it. I don't know if Frey can control on top here with Dudakova's active bottom game, and if Dudakova gets on top, I do think she can dominate Frey, so I feel like Dudakova does have the edge on the ground. We saw Frey against Kay Hansen a few years ago, and she started well but ended up getting submitted later in the fight. I think in this fight, she's facing a higher level wrestler, but maybe someone that's not quite as dangerous with her jiu-jitsu. It's a tough fight to pick Frey in, though. I just think Dudakova has much to prove before being a safe pick at this price tag, but Frey is old on a losing streak and has to travel across the world to fight a girl who has the crowd on her side. I think Dudakova is going to get it to the ground. Where on Frey, you could have moments and probably do well in certain portions of the fight, but I think that for the most part, Dudakova is going to be doing the better of it on the ground, and I could see her win a decision, or I could see her even getting a submission. So my pick is going to be Viktoriia Dudakova to get the win over Jinh Frey. And up next here, we got Nathaniel Wood. He's making his return after a pretty quick turnaround. He just fought a couple months ago, taking on Mohammad, who had a great UFC debut. And Naimov, came in short notice, took on a guy that everyone respects. Close to the top 15 type fighter in Jamie Mullarkey, a solid UFC veteran type of guy, short notice. Like I said, very short notice too. And he was getting beat up in that fight, but only needed one punch to turn it around and knocked Mullarkey out cold. And now he's had a longer camp to get ready to fight another high-level fighter, Nathaniel Wood. And with the victory here, he could be in the rankings. So he's making a quick rise up the UFC. But Nathaniel Wood, he's gone 3-0 since moving to 145. And overall, he's 7-2 in 9 UFC fights. So he has a really, really good record. I think he should be fighting up in the rankings due to the run he's on. But he seems to like fighting in Abu Dhabi. Maybe this is the 3rd time he's fought on Fight Island, and I'm not sure why he wants to fight someone at the level with Naimov. Maybe he just feels he still has to kind of prove himself, but I think once you beat Andre Fili, you deserve a top 15 guy. But If Wood beats Naimov, I hope they do give him a big step up for his next fight. And you look at Nathaniel Wood, he's a high volume kick first fighter. He is known for his leg kicks, and he attacks the body with a lot of kicks too. His hands are all right, but mostly uses them to counter. He throws a lot of left hooks. He'll throw the 3-2s, 2-3s, and when opponents get in a range, he will wing some big punches. He's down to brawl. His last fight, he landed some pretty nice overhands, and his hands looked really crisp and fast. So he is potentially working on his boxing, and I would say his boxing defense is not good, though. He's hittable. He takes a lot of damage. We saw Andre Feely was extremely close to getting Wood out of there in Wood's last fight. He was able to survive, and Nathaniel Wood does have a really strong chin in terms of he can take a shot and recover, but he has been finished with strikes before, and he's taken a lot of damage throughout his career, and his cardio and toughness are kind of would allow him to recover fast. I feel like definitely needs to improve that, but he also has good takedown defense. He can get takedowns when he wants to. I don't necessarily know if he's going to try to wrestle in this fight, but I don't think it would be the worst game plan because we've seen Naimov struggle a little bit with that. But with Mohammad Naimov, he's very explosive, powerful. He has good footwork, and he'll try to pull guys into his strikes. He has a good jab, double jab. He'll throw the double jab overhand. He has hard leg kicks, but he isn't nearly as active with his kicks as Wood or active in general. He isn't going to, in my opinion, be able to keep up the volume with Nathaniel Wood, so he's going to have to rely on getting the knockout, in my opinion. I think he has to be more aggressive. I think he can't rely on the counter. He has to go first a little bit more. Wood, if he kicks and just stays at range, you can just outnumber and avoid the danger for the most part against Naimov. And Naimov has to be very aggressive here. But the issue with that is I think that his wrestling isn't the best. So if he gets very aggressive, I could see Wood trying to just go in there and take him down. But Naimov's tough to hold down. He trains at elevation, so he's in great shape. Every fight that he goes in there, he has good cardio. But I see Nathaniel Wood as the pick here. Naimov is live for the knockout just because Wood is susceptible to getting clipped. And like we saw in Naimov's last fight, he can end it with one punch. But I think Wood will be able to get ahead with his kicking game. And I see the volume being the difference in the fight, just his veteran experience overall. Wood can't show Naimov too much respect because that's when he'll probably get knocked out. He needs to implement his same high-volume pressure style, try to stay composed, not brawl, and I see him getting the job done via decision. So I'm going to go with Nathaniel Wood to get the win here and maybe progress up the ladder to a ranked guy for his next fight. But I think it's, in my opinion, in terms of the money line, a dog or pass fight here. And up next here, we got Mike Breeden taking on Anshul Jubli. And Anshul Jubli is undefeated. He's 7-0. He's an Indian fighter, so you know that's a huge market. There are billions of people in that country, and there's not really been a guy. I guess Arjan Bhullar back in the day was able to kind of break into that market a little bit, but he kind of didn't pan out in the UFC. So Jubli, they're giving him a kind of a 0-3 fighter here, so they're definitely trying to get him the win. Mike Breeden, he just got knocked out recently against Terrence McKinney on August 8th, but it was a body shot knockout. It wasn't necessarily that much head damage, so I don't think it's going to affect him too much, but I'm sure he's just happy to have gotten the call to come back for another UFC fight, and this is probably Breeden's last chance at a UFC win. He's gotten finished 2 out of his 3 appearances in the UFC in the first round, so definitely has to go in here and show a good fight. But Anshul Jubli, he is like a technical brawler. He's athletic, powerful. His speed is good, I would say, and he'll throw some clean jabs, some straight punches, some body shots. And the body punches are something I think could be a big factor in this fight. He mixes in some tight hooks, and I think we've seen Breeden get hurt to the body just recently, so that's a very, in my opinion, smart thing for Jubli to do is go back to those body shots. But one thing about Jubli is defensively, he needs to improve. He starts a little bit stiff. He has limited head movement early in fights. It seems like he will pick it up a little bit later on with his defense, but if you watch his fight on the Road UFC tournament against Kim. He got hit with a lot of shots, and he has a good chin. He has to be the more durable fighter here with Breeden against him. But you don't want to see a guy taking a lot of damage or getting hit with a lot of shots. And Breeden is a decent striker with his forward pressure, so Jubli just needs to shapen that up a little bit as he continues to progress in terms of UFC competition. But cardio-wise, Jubli has excellent cardio. He pushes the pace. I feel like he is a fairly impressive prospect. His last fight, he fought a fighter with bad wrestling grappling. He was significantly smaller than him, and he showed good control on top. He finished in the second round with ground and pound, so he showed good fight IQ to bring that fight to the ground because he was facing a guy with good kicks, and I feel like Jubli has a little bit of issues with kicking defense, and he made the fight easy for himself. In this fight, I think it's probably going to be more of a war. I don't think he's going to look to wrestle as much, but Mike Breeden, I feel like he isn't a terrible fighter. He has good pressure. He cuts the cage off. He throws some nice feints. He has some crisp, straight punches. You attack the body, too. And you also rip some heavy hooks, and he throws in combination. He has pretty fast hands. He has decent overall boxing, I would say, for sure. And dangerous knees. He has 2 knockouts with knees. He has bad wrestling defense, though. All those get-ups are good. He can be held down as fights go on. And when he can get into the fight, he becomes kind of difficult to beat. He's kind of a rhythm fighter. In 3 of his 6 losses, he's been knocked out in less than a minute and 30 seconds. So definitely a slow starter. And him just getting finished with body shots just 2 months ago does worry me a little bit. But Breeden, when he's at his best, is pressuring, using his boxing, his cardio to win a dogfight. And he does take damage to give damage. But obviously, sometimes it doesn't work out like that, and he can get finished. Like, look at that right there, 12.96 significant strikes absorbed per minute. And I will say, fighting guys like Alexander Hernandez and Terrence McKinney, where they take you out super quick, and those guys are kind of the guys that do that to certain people, that can kind of inflate that, but still, that's terrible, man. But I expect Jubli to go out here, maybe try to establish the wrestling early, but more use that to open up his hands, attack the body. And I think Breeden, because he's more durable to the head, attacking the body is going to definitely be the way to go. And I think he can end up finishing Breeden in this fight via TKO. So I think Jubli is going to win via second round KO TKO here. And up next here we got Abu Azaitar taking on Sedriques Dumas. And Sedriques Dumas, he bounced back after losing for the first time in his UFC debut. He fought Cody Brunich, who's not necessarily a UFC level fighter. He got the job done via decision. Now Dumas is 1-1 in the UFC. He's 8-1 in his career. And he's going overseas to fight for the first time. He's facing the most experienced opponent he's ever fought. And his opponent, Abu Azaitar, it's been 2.5 years since we've seen him fight. The 37-year-old German fighter had some hype when he joined the UFC in 2018, but he just has not fought. He fought and won his debut in July of 2018, but he didn't fight again until March of 2021. That fight he lost to Marc-Andre Barriault, and this is his first fight since then. And they were supposed to fight in March, but Azaitar pulled out, so I don't know what that was about. But if you look at them skills-wise, Sedriques Dumas, he's a long and lanky guy. He isn't technical, but he looks to land that big rear hand counter, and he's fairly accurate. He does have big reactions to feints, and if he can't land that initial counter as guys are coming in, he is there to be hit. He's not a technical striker, but he has fast kicks. He'll throw good body kicks, good head kicks, couple KOs with his kicks. He's more of a grappler. He has okay offensive wrestling, good defensive wrestling, uses his length well to reverse takedowns to get on top, and good front chokes, good back takes. He isn't a big finisher, but he can hold fighters down. His cardio is good, and when he can be the hammer, he has good cardio, but he did show he wasn't the best nail against Josh Frem, so that could be something where if you beat him up and put it on him, he could gas quick. But Abu Azaitar, he's an aging striker. He's getting another chance in the UFC. And I think probably his best chance to get a win here against a relatively inexperienced opponent. And on the feet, Azaitar should maybe have the edge. He likes to be in and out. He'll blitz in with big power hooks, body head. I think his blitzes and combos will be effective against Dumas when he's fresh. And he should do well to try to kind of goad Dumas into a war and get him emotional, because I don't really trust Dumas mentally yet in terms of the fight game, and I think Azaitar maybe could draw him into a brawl, and that could be a path to victory for him. But as Azaitar gets tired, he becomes sloppy, and that's where Dumas could snipe him or land one of those fast kicks and get Azaitar out of there. But Azaitar is strong. He has questionable defense with his takedowns, and his grappling doesn't look good either. But initially, he's kind of hard to take down until he gets tired, and then takedowns come easier after that. And Azaitar, he just doesn't seem like he's the most technical guy on the ground. It's all using his explosiveness to reverse position or bounce up to his feet, and when that goes away, he can just get held down. His last fight, he won round 1 through some clinch control, and I could see him maybe trying to do that again here, but his cardio fell off a cliff after that round, and I think that Dumas is going to hold up a little bit better, and I'm going to pick Dumas in this fight because I think he's going to have a little bit more top control. I think he's going to have slightly better optics for the judges due to not gassing out like I think Azaitar is going to do. I don't really have a lot of interest in picking a guy on the money line or betting it. I see some people have big bets on either side here, so this is one of those fights where both people have differentiated opinions, but I see it as a fairly unpredictable fight, but I'm going to pick Dumas to win via decision. And this next fight, we got Javid Basharat. He's taking on Victor Henry. And Basharat, he's kind of on the cusp of contention. He's 3-0 to start his UFC career, but already 14-0 overall. And he's been picking off some of the lower-level guys in the UFC, but he's looked impressive. I would say this is not a significant step up, but it's probably the best fighter he's fought. As of now, you could say Tony Gravely is Basharat's best opponent, but Victor Henry just beat Gravely in his last fight. And Victor Henry's a veteran. He's going to be 8 years older than Basharat. He's 23-7. He's 2-1 in the UFC. And Victor Henry, he's one of these guys that had the long road to get to the UFC, came in, got that big upset over Raoni Barcelos, and then suffered a setback that pushed him back. So if he wants to get to those big names, big paydays, this is his path there through beating Javid Basharat, a high-level prospect. And if he can do that, he's probably going to be in a marquee fight for his next fight. So pivotal fight for both guys, and I think both guys are pretty good opponents. But personally, I feel like Basharat, his line is crazy, like he's a huge favorite, but I think he should get the win here just through having the better speed and movement. You look at Victor Henry, more flat-footed striker. He's a good kicker, good pressure, very tough guy, good grappler as well. But he doesn't have that movement, in my opinion, to kind of get inside and kind of make Basharat fight. I feel like Basharat can stay on the back foot, kind of kick and move the whole time, land these counter punches as Henry comes in, who's a hittable guy as he tries to close the gap, and just kind of play tag with him and move for the whole fight. I don't think Henry's going to be able to take him down or hold him against the cage. If guys that he's fought before that are better wrestlers than Henry have not been able to do it. And I still think Basharat needs some polishing. Like, I think his defense, even though he has great distance control, could improve. He could potentially get clipped by some more explosive guys, or he could struggle against a fighter that can cut the cage off, nullify his kicks, and make it more of a boxing fight, or pin him against the fence and kind of just take away his weapons. But I don't necessarily see Victor Henry being that guy. I think Victor Henry is going to hang in tough like he always does. I think he's going to, have a couple moments where he lands some good punches, but I don't think he's going to have the sustained success or output that Basharat's going to have. And ultimately, I just think Basharat's going to prove to be a little bit too fast and too slick for Victor Henry in this fight. And in this next one, we got Muhammad Yahya taking on Trevor Peek. And With Muhammad Yahya, he's a local UAE fighter. He's making his UFC debut, 12-3, and the current UAE Warriors champion at 155 pounds. And for Trevor Peek, he is a guy that we've gotten through the Contender Series that has had some bangers every time he's gone out there. He's coming off a loss to Jose Chepe Mariscal, but Chepe's a good fighter, and Trevor Peek got some experience there where he had not been in a long fight. Before then, this one he went all the way to a decision and did seem like he got very tired, so hopefully he's made some adjustments and comes in looking better for this one. But you look at how these guys match up. With Muhammad Yahya, he's an evasive fighter. He could switch stance. He has good footwork. And as far as offensive striking, he has fast hands. He can throw in combination. He'll attack the body. He'll attack the head. He doesn't have much pop, it doesn't seem like. He will sometimes sit in the pocket, too, with his hands completely down, just throwing these slow, loaded punches. And I feel like he has a questionable chin, and I've seen him dropped in several fights. He has average wrestling, it seems like. It seems like he's better at holding guys against the cage and actually taking them down. But he will work for takedowns, and if he can get on top, he's good with his control. His main attributes to me are his evasiveness on the feet, his gas tank, and his willingness to wrestle and push people against the cage. But he lacks explosiveness. He has questionable striking in the pocket, questionable striking off the back foot. I feel like he has subpar power and a weak chin. I think he's a bit small for the weight class also, and I could see him maybe struggling with the physicality of Peek. His last fight, he got taken down a few times and gave his back, and Peek probably can get him down through sheer physicality. But Yahya's going to have to be smart, composed, play the long game here, and if he can weather the storm early, he could potentially start to have success as the fight goes on. He's been in 5-round fights and definitely won't gas, whereas Peek in his last fight, it was the first time he had been in a long fight and he got tired. So Trevor Peek, he's not the most technical fighter, but he's very powerful, athletic. He has exceptional heart. He was able to come back from the dead in his Contender Series fight and in his UFC debut, or not really as much in his debut, but definitely in his Contender Series fight to knock his opponent out and earn the UFC contract. And tends to come forward, use his speed, his power. He has good feints. He'll wing big, heavy punches. He'll mix it up body head. He mixes in takedowns. He'll throw some really heavy leg kicks, body kicks, head kicks. And he doesn't set things up, but everything he throws is very heavy. His defense is bad. He's a very hittable fighter. And his offense is kind of his defense. And when he gets tired, then he just becomes the punching bag. But Peek's wrestling is good, but not elite. He can lift and hit big slams. He's very explosive when he's full gas tank. His control on top is good, and he has big ground and pound. Takedown defense seems a little bit questionable, but he's hard to control. A good grappler will definitely expose him, like we saw Chepe in his last fight get several takedowns and hold Peek down, but I don't know if Yahya is going to be able to do that necessarily. And cardio-wise, Peek is all action. He's a kill-or-be-killed fighter. He's willing to fight through fatigue, but doesn't have a ton of long fights. He did gas versus Mariscal, but I think in this one, he has the chance to get the finish early. And if he can, I think he can't. I think he's going to learn from that last experience and have a better gas tank and pace himself a little better in this fight. But I think Trevor Peek's going to get the knockout in the first here. Yahya may be more technical, but I think Trevor Peek's physicality, his wild man style will be too much here for Yahya. Yahya, I think he's going to struggle to control Peek, and the fact that Yahya is hittable is going to come back to haunt him. I think if Yahya can survive early, he could wrestle to victory, but ultimately I'm going to say Peek gets the first round knockout. And this next fight is a great prelim fight with Mohammad Mokaev taking on Tim Elliott. And Mokaev is one of, if not the biggest prospect in MMA today. He's never lost. He's on a 33-fight winning streak if you go back to his amateur career, and he's still in pursuit of becoming the youngest champion in UFC history. The clock is ticking on that, but still has that as his goal. And he slowly built himself up. He beat some lower-level guys. He did take out Cody Durden, which that win has aged really nicely. but he's getting a step up in competition for this fight. He's fighting the journeyman, the gatekeeper, Tim Elliott. Tim Elliott, he's a fighter who's been in the top 15 for nearly a decade, and if you aren't a top 5 fighter, top 10 fighter, Elliott's probably going to beat you. And Mokaev's going to have to be on his game to win this fight. I don't think it's an easy matchup whatsoever. But Mokaev, he is elite wrestling. He has excellent cardio, and his will to win is evident. He has an extremely fast double leg. His chain wrestling, his scrambling ability is phenomenal. He can wrestle hard all day. He's won his last 2 fights via third-round submission after wearing his opponents out. On the feet, he's very fast, evasive, and has some nice kicks. He can throw kicks to all parts of the body. He has very fast kicks. He will sometimes come in with flying knees, and then when he sees the opening, level change and get the takedown too after kind of setting you up with some blitzing knees or blitzing kicks. And he has fast hands, but he isn't the best or most active with his hands. Defensively, I would say his striking defense is subpar, but his speed and wrestling make him difficult to hit. And when he can get on top, he has great ability to control and transition from position to position. He definitely needs to level up his ground and pound, and he can lose position sometimes, but his submission game is on point. Incredibly difficult to submit. I mean, we saw in his last fight with Jafel Filo, he got his leg mangled in that leg lock, but he didn't tap out. And that's something to think about. You know, this is his first fight since that one, and it wasn't that long ago. He's really pushing it in terms of recovery and coming back this quickly. So hopefully he isn't coming in here kind of compromised, but it's a really good fight for Mokaev to get a gritty opponent who's going to push him. And if he can pass the Tim Elliott test, he's going to probably be ready to fight someone in the top 5. So Tim Elliott, he's fought the who's who, and he's no stranger to fighting the style of Mokaev. I mean, he's recently fought guys like Aliskerov. He fought Tagir Ulanbekov, and he beat Tagir in his last fight against the Dagestani fighter. But Tim Elliott is a huge fighter for the weight class. His nickname epitomizes his style, too. He's an awkward guy. He's constantly moving on the feet. He switches stances, and he'll close the distance from weird angles, holds his hands completely down, and then he can take crazy punishment, too, and keep coming. So eat shots, talk to you, and kind of break your spirit. And he also has fairly good head movement. He parries punches well, and while he's looks there to be touched, he isn't as easy to be hit as it looks. And he'll throw some wild looping punches. He has some power, good pressure, good clinch knees, decent kicks. And in this fight, I think he's going to need to bring the pressure, try to nullify the kicks of Mokaev, watch out for the flying knee, and if he can make it a stand-up war, use his scrambling ability and kind of anti-wrestling to keep it standing or stay on top or in an advantageous position, then that's going to be his path to victory. And Tim Elliott's calling card has always been his wrestling. He'll get big slams when he can get to the clinch. He has a good double leg too. On top, he's very active with ground and pound. He has a good submission game. He can lose position sometimes, and he's been submitted a lot of his losses, but hasn't been submitted in quite a while. And cardio has been an issue in fights for Elliott in the past, but I do expect him to be motivated and in great shape for this fight. And there's been a lot of trash talk during the build-up, so I think Elliott has nothing to lose, and I expect him to come out here and have some fun. One thing I am a little bit worried about is just with his age, him being a big guy, having to fly, halfway across the world to cut weight, he could potentially struggle with that. So if he has a bad weight cut, then we could maybe see those cardio issues come back. So that's something I want to see in terms of this fight, is how both fighters, or really specifically how Tim Elliott looks on the scales. But Tim Elliott could definitely make this fight interesting if he could take the power of Mokaev, nullify the wrestling, and he could make it a really tough fight. But Elliott's going to have more volume on the inside, and if he could pressure without being taken down, then I think it's going to be close. But Mokaev needs to believe in his hands in this one, let combos go. And if I'm Mokaev, I would have worked boxing this whole camp. When Tim Elliott comes in shape, he's a beast, though, and I think it's going to be a really fun back-and-forth fight with a ton of scrambles, some good striking moments from both guys. And if it goes to decision, I think it'll be fairly close, but I'm going to say Mokaev gets the win. And I wouldn't be shocked if Mokaev was able to catch a submission at some point either. But I will officially predict Mokaev wins in a close competitive decision that's a lot closer than the line actually indicates here. And up next we got Muin Gafurov. He's taking on Said Nurmagomedov. And Gafurov, he came into the UFC. He fought John Castaneda on short notice, who's a pretty good fighter. And he had a good account of himself early. He hurt Castaneda a couple times, but ended up getting tired and losing down the stretch. Ended up losing that fight. So he's still in search of his first UFC win and has a big opportunity in front of him here with Said Nurmagomedov, who has kind of been up and down a little bit in the UFC, but he's had some big wins, some big finishes over ranked opponents. And he's coming off a loss to Jonathan Martinez, but we just saw Jonathan Martinez dominate Adrian Yanez on the feet, and Said Nurmagomedov was able to turn him into more of a wrestler, grappler. So we know how good Said Nurmagomedov is in the striking. But with Muin Gafurov, he is a well-rounded fighter, but the best weapon he has is probably his double leg, which Said Nurmagomedov is going to have to be aware of. And Gafurov is explosive. He is aggressive on top. He has good guillotines. He has good back takes. He can be sloppy and lose position. I feel like his top game isn't elite, but he has the wrestling to get it to the ground when he wants to. And he has good cardio when he has a full camp. So I think he'll have the cardio to wrestle hard in this fight. He does get a little sloppy with his wrestling as the fight goes on, and that's where Said could maybe lock in one of those submissions. But Gafurov's striking, I would say, is okay. He is a good kicker, especially early in fights, and he's explosive with his hand combos, big power in his overhands, good spinning kicks. But I feel like he leaves a lot of openings, and Nurmagomedov is the much sharper striker. When you look at Said Nurmagomedov, he is a flashy guy. He has a good 1-2. He has a quick jab, good counter left hook, good rear uppercut. But his kicks are what are his money shots, man. He throws a lot of front kicks to the legs, to the body. He likes to throw question mark kicks, head kicks. He'll throw, front kicks, spinning kicks. He throws really odd strikes, man. Like, he has very flashy, strange style where he's mixing in elbows. He's throwing all these wide variety attacks. I would say it kind of reminds me almost of a Yahya Rodriguez in the way that he strikes, just his unpredictability and his wide array of strikes and his ability to kick, his dexterity. Really good kicker, and just his speed, his feints, his ability to read distance and then, set and counter, and just the dangerous strikes that he throws make him, a menace to deal with. And then his wrestling is not the greatest. Like, we've seen guys that have a strong wrestling base be able to take him down and kind of muscle him around a little bit. But what he has shown is that guillotine that he has is one of the best guillotines in the division. I mean, he's been training with all these other Nurmagomedovs, all these guys that have been trying to take him down and grab his legs. And he said, okay, I'm going to figure out how to counter that with choking the shit out of these guys. So he's gotten a really good front choke game. And his wrestling isn't terrible. Like, he's a decent scrambler. And I just feel he's going to be able to end up getting a finish, whether it's a KO TKO finish or a submission finish. I think that Said is just slightly better everywhere, and he'll be able to get the finish either on the feet or as Gafurov shoots in with the front choke. And this fight, I don't got a ton to say about it. We had a short notice fight with this one with Ikram Aliskerov taking on Warlley Alves. Now, there was a couple other opponents that Aliskerov was going to originally fight. He was going to fight someone, and then he was locked in with Imavov, and both those fights ended up not coming to fruition. And now Warlley Alves is stepping in on relatively short notice. And I feel like this is an easy fight for Aliskerov. Warlley is a dangerous guy early on. He has to go crazy, in the first few minutes of the fight, go for those body kicks, try to get Aliskerov uncomfortable, and then when he shoots in, snatch that neck or just knock him out. We've seen Aliskerov get knocked out early before in a fight against Khamzat. So I think that's the path to victory for Alves, because you look at Alves historically, he isn't the greatest striker. He has decent Muay Thai, he has decent power, but hittable, he unravels. He's not a guy that has good cardio, and if he can't get that guillotine you can start to take him down and control him on the mat. He also has been finished several times at this point. So I feel like Warlley's getting more towards the end of his career. And Aliskerov is fresh. He's in the UFC with only one fight, where it was a knockout win against a fighter I think was a little bit better, higher on the totem pole than Alves in Phil Haas. And I just think Aliskerov is going to be able to do what he wants in this fight. I think on the feet he could get the better of it, and I think on the ground he can get the better of it. I think he has the better wrestling. It's just he has to avoid getting finished early, and that's path to victory for Warlley. And I do think it is viable there. I mean, we did see Warlley, he went in there, he fought a hype train in Munir Lazez after Lazez styled on Abdul Razak. He was a big underdog and took him out really early in the fight. So Alves has the tools to go out there and blitz someone, and Aliskerov is someone that I think is a little overrated. Like I was, full disclosure, going to pick Imavov, but in this matchup, I think Aliskerov's probably going to get the finish after Alves gets tired in the first round. So I'm going to say Aliskerov via second round submission. And up next, we got Johnny Walker taking on Magomed Ankalaev. And this is an interesting fight because I feel like if you look at it just from a glance, you could think it's going to be extremely exciting, but I could see this being a boring fight too. I mean, both these guys have a lot to lose off this fight, and they do, in recent fights, have a tendency to fight conservative against other people that have a knockout ability. So you look at Johnny Walker, he's the fighter coming in here with the more momentum, I would say. He's on a 3-fight winning streak. He just took out Anthony Smith, which is arguably the best fighter that he's defeated in his career. And with Ankalaev, he hasn't fought in quite a while. If you remember his fight last year in December, he fought Jan Blachowicz for the light heavyweight title. That fight ended up being a draw, and Ankalaev was really mad about the decision. He threatened to leave the UFC, and obviously, I think he was just upset in the moment. And now he's back. He's facing Johnny Walker, and UFC's not letting him kind of get up there and fight another high-level guy, fight for the belt again right away like some people thought. They're giving him a dangerous fighter that's lower than him in the rankings that, if he loses to Johnny Walker, he's going to tumble pretty significantly in terms of his career trajectory. So UFC's kind of giving Johnny Walker a chance to make a name for himself, and he used to be that guy. He used to be someone that people looked at as a title threat, and if he beats Ankalaev, he is going to be there once again. And why I say this is going to be a boring fight, though, kind of, if you watch Anthony Smith versus Johnny Walker and Johnny Walker's last fight, it seems like when Johnny Walker's facing a guy that is willing to play that range striking game and kind of have minimal risk and just have a sparring match, he's willing to do that. Now, he did that with Thiago Santos too. He did that with Anthony. I think that at SBG, they're preaching to him to fight smart, use his length, use his weapons. You don't have to get the knockout to get the win. Knockouts are going to come organically, things like that. And with Ankalaev, he's someone that also can have these low-volume fights where he's on the outside waiting for the counter. And if both these guys are just feigning and moving and looking at each other a lot, then could end up being a boring fight. But I think that Walker has the more knockout upside early. Or it's hard to say that just because Walker's chin is so bad that if Ankalaev does land clean with the southpaw boxing combinations or that head kick, he could definitely knock Walker out. But I feel like Walker is the more powerful guy and the more explosive, dangerous guy. And Ankalaev has gotten clipped and hurt. He got clipped by Dautsalungi and Bula, by Anthony Smith. But he's never actually been knocked out or shown a bad chin. So I think that Johnny Walker knocking him out is not going to be a huge likelihood. And Walker has shown a bad chin, so Ankalaev could catch him. But I feel like Ankalaev likes to be more of a precise striker. And unless he just lands that perfect shot, it's probably going to be a longer fight. And I don't see either guy really wrestling here. I think Ankalaev has that in his back pocket, but Walker has improved his grappling and wrestling pretty significantly, and I don't know if Walker or if Ankalaev is going to want to try to kind of get in that battle. We've seen Ankalaev, like, he was able to take down Blachowicz and beat him with takedowns, but that's Jan's Achilles heel throughout his whole career. And Ankalaev, I don't think, is necessarily the greatest wrestler and grappler in the world. So I think it's going to be more of a striking fight at range. I think both guys are going to be kind of a little bit tentative, afraid to take that risk. But ultimately, I just feel like Ankalaev is going to be a little bit sharper overall. But I think it's a dog or pass, honestly. I feel like it's a close fight. Ankalaev isn't the type of guy like a Jamal Hill or something like that where I think he's going to go in there hunting for the knockout. He's going to play the, smart game and let Walker slowly get into it too. So I think it could end up being close, and I think it's going to be a decision, but I'm going to go with Ankalaev via decision here. And up next, we got an amazing fight, man. We got a fight that it's been talked about for years, and originally it was talked about it was going to be a 170-pound title fight between the former champ, former pound-for-pound #1 fighter in the world, Kamaru Usman, and Khamzat Chimaev. But now in a turn of events, I mean, these guys are going to be fighting a 3-round co-main event at 185 pounds with Usman jumping in on like 9 days notice. So really, really intriguing fight in my opinion. I mean, Chimaev, he has a big advantage in terms of, I believe he left Europe. He's training now in UAE full time. So he's going to have the acclimation there. He's going to have, everyone there where he has his nutrition right. He has everything perfect, his routine. And Usman's going to have to be, flying across the world and getting ready to fight with the kind of an abbreviated training camp. But I do think Usman is in better shape and he's going to be on point for this fight, man. I think some people are kind of underestimating the shape that he's going to be in, thinking that he's going to maybe not be in fight shape necessarily, and he's taking this fight for a paycheck or other things like that. And maybe that's true, maybe I'll be incorrect, but personally I feel like Usman, man, this is a fight that's been talked about for a long time where a lot of people are saying, Chimaev was going to go out there and take Usman out, take his belt. He was easy work for Chimaev, and Usman's always welcomed this fight. I remember when they were supposed to do this Abu Dhabi matchup a few months ago, Usman raised his hand and said he would be the opponent for this date. So I think that he's going to be very motivated for this fight. It's kind of a make or break match for his career. If he wins this fight, man, I mean, we could see him in a title fight at 185 in his next match. They already said it's confirmed, and he beat Sean Strickland in the past. So he could get an easy path to another title right there, or at least another title opportunity. And you don't know if he would have had that at 170. I mean, if Leon beats Colby, goes on a run, he's not going to be able to fight for that belt for a long time. So he's getting like a lottery ticket right here. He's getting a fight. Khamzat Chimaev, one of the biggest names, biggest prospects in the sport. He can go out there, beat him, re-announce himself in a new division, get an instant title shot, and probably be the favorite to win the belt. So I think Usman is in a great position here. And Chimaev is also in a great position. I mean, this guy is one fight away from a UFC title, and he's had a really interesting route in the UFC. I mean, originally he fought, twice in 10 days, and Dana White was talking about how he's going to be the most active fighter in UFC history. He wants to fight every weekend. He's calling him and harassing him to fight, and then now it's like his career didn't pan out that way. He's fought very infrequently. He hasn't necessarily fought. He's fought some high-level guys, but most of the fights that he's had have been favorable matchups, where the one match that he's had that was more of a difficult fight with Gilbert Burns ended up being a really tough one, and now he's getting another intriguing fight where it's someone that could push back on the wrestling again here with Usman. So these are the type of fights you would have wanted to see Chimaev in the last couple of years, but been over a year since we've last seen him in the cage. And hopefully, he's been training. I mean, obviously, the reports on him is he trains like a demon all the time. So could come in here looking even better. And we're going to see. But it's just a very interesting fight because I feel like people are putting dirt on Kamaru Usman like he's in the grave already. Like, people are saying the guy's going to get knocked out. He has no chance to win this fight. But it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, okay, he's on a 2-fight losing streak, but the Edwards fight, the first one, he was winning 24 minutes of the fight, got caught, and then the second fight, he had a horrible performance, and it was still a very competitive, close fight. I mean, majority decision. So I feel like Usman, I mean, you could never underestimate the heart of a champion, man. And this is the fight to cement his legacy as one of the greatest fighters of all time. If Usman could win this fight, he will definitely go down as one of the best UFC fighters in history. This is another career-defining fight for him. And you look at how these guys match up, I mean, if Chimaev could just take down Kamaru Usman, out-wrestle him, and dominate him on the mat, submit him in the first round, he'll be the first person to ever do that, and it'll be extremely, extremely impressive. I mean, we're talking about a national champion wrestler, even if it was Division II in America, and I think a lot of people, they don't give that respect to the U.S. wrestlers, man. You didn't see, like, all these Dagestani guys where they're crushing all these fighters. They never fought, like, national champion wrestlers, the Habibs, the Islams, and the few times we've seen those type of matchups, like in Bellator, who was it? I can't remember who this guy, Rafael Stotts fought Magomedov, and Stotts beat him, and we've had another couple matchups like that where I think U.S. wrestling gets underestimated in these matchups, and I think that this is going to be another one of those kind of copies to see, or fights to see if whose wrestling is better. I mean, is Chimaev going to be able to go out there, dominate Usman, and submit him, where we've really only seen Usman taken down a couple times? I mean, I'll give Colby the takedown, even though the UFC won't. And then he got taken down by Edwards kind of by surprise. But if Usman can't go out there and get him out of there quick or take him down at will, and it stays on the feet, I don't get how you could line Usman that big of an underdog. I mean, in the striking, I think it's pretty close. I mean, Usman, I don't think he's going to get knocked out, man. I see a lot of people saying he has a bad chin or he's going to get KO'd, but the guy got KO'd by a head kick that could, like, knock out a freaking gorilla, and that's the only time he's ever been knocked out in his whole career or dropped in the UFC. So I think it's a little overblown, his chin. He has gotten hurt in certain fights, but when you're fighting the best guys in the world, that's going to happen. I mean, we saw Chimaev get hurt by Burns as well, but you know, I think that Chimaev has good straight punches. He has the nice jab. But this fight, he's facing another guy that has a long reach too, that has a really good jab. And defensively, I think is a little sharper than Chimaev, even though he's a little bit maybe more war-torn. I don't think he can go out there and get in a war with Chimaev or, you know, want to try to sit in the pocket and bang with him. But if he fights smart, I think he has the more punching power. I mean, I think it's evident from that Gilbert Burns fight that when Chimaev landed clean on Burns, he was able to take the shots, come back. And when Usman landed clean on Burns, he dropped him and then eventually knocked him out. So if this doesn't end up being a wrestling match, I don't see why Usman can't have a lot of success on the feet. And I just see this as like a 50-50 toss-up fight, man. I don't understand how people go from having Usman, the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, to all of a sudden he's a almost 3-1 underdog in this fight. So just based off value alone, the line alone, and me respecting the resume that Usman has had, thinking this is a tough matchup with the wrestling, with the cardio. We've only seen Chimaev in one hard fight, and it was a war. It was a fight that Gilbert Burns could have won. And Usman isn't going to get tired like Burns got tired in that fight too, or let Chimaev have these moments where he's wilting him against a cage, or it's like these bad optic moments. I think Usman's a smarter fighter than that. So, man, I feel like this is a close fight, and I don't know. I hear a lot of people this week saying, like, Usman's the value side, I'm picking Chimaev. Usman's the value side, I'm picking Chimaev. I mean, come on, man. You know, put your balls on the table. So I'm going to pick Usman to get the win in this one. I'll say he wins via decision, and go with Kamaru Usman, man, the former champ.